Blood trickled down Mark Reeves' face as he stared at the hulking man who had just slapped him hard enough to split his lip. The cafe fell silent, customers frozen in shock. But it wasn't the public humiliation that made Mark's hands tremble. It was the photo the bully had just slid across the table, showing Mark's 6-year-old daughter Emma walking home from school alone. One phone call, the man whispered, and she disappears forever. Unless you do exactly what I ask. Mark's military instincts screamed to neutralize the threat immediately, but with Emma's safety at stake, he felt utterly powerless. 10 years of Delta Force operations, 3 tours in war zones where he'd saved countless lives, and now he couldn't even protect his own daughter. The bully couldn't possibly know who Mark really was, what he was capable of, or he'd never have been stupid enough to threaten Emma. But knowledge was power, and right now, this stranger held all the cards. Problem over here. A woman's voice cut through the tension. She stood beside their table, long hair cascading over her shoulders, intelligent eyes assessing the situation with surprising precision. Something about her stance told Mark she wasn't just a concerned bystander. The bully glared at her. "Mind your own business, lady." Mark caught her subtle wrist movement, the almost imperceptible adjustment of what appeared to be a concealed holster. Who was she? "I'm Sophia Carter," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "And I believe this establishment has a strict no-harassment policy." The intensity in her eyes suggested she knew more than she was letting on. Could she be the answer to his impossible situation? The bully stood abruptly, towering over them both. "This isn't over, Reeves. You have 24 hours. He brushed past Sophia with deliberate force, nearly knocking her over. Mark caught her arm to steady her, feeling the unmistakable muscle tone of someone trained for combat. "You should get that cut looked at," Sophia said, sliding into the seat across from him. "And then you should tell me why Raymond Keller, one of the most dangerous arms dealers in the country, is threatening your daughter." Mark's blood ran cold. "How do you?" "Because..." She lowered her voice. "I've been tracking him for 18 months. I'm FBI." She slid her badge across the table, keeping it partially concealed. "And I think we might be able to help each other." Their eyes locked, and for the first time since the threat, Mark felt a flicker of hope. But could he trust her with Emma's life, with his past? "Your daughter is safe for now," Sophia said as they watched Emma playing at her friend's house from Mark's parked car. "My team is agents watching her, but we need to move quickly. Keller never makes empty threats." "Why target me?" Mark asked, wincing as Sophia cleaned the cut on his face with supplies from a first aid kit. Her touch was surprisingly gentle for someone so clearly trained for combat. "That's what I can't figure out," she admitted, her face inches from his. "Unless there's something about you I don't know yet." Mark tensed. His Delta Force background was classified, his missions redacted from every official record. After his wife died 3 years ago, he'd buried that part of himself, focusing solely on raising Emma. "I'm just a single dad who works in security consulting," he said. Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly. "A single dad who recognized my concealed weapon in half a second and moves like someone with extensive tactical training." Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "But we can play it your way for now." The tension between them was interrupted by Sophia's phone. Her face darkened as she read the message. "We have a problem. Keller's men are moving in on your apartment. Right now. Emma's baby pictures are there," Mark said, starting the car. "All I have left of her mother. Everything else, Mark, we can't go there. It's not safe." But he was already pulling away from the curb, his jaw set in determination. "Then stay behind." Sophia cursed under her breath before replying, "Not a chance. But just so you know, this is a terrible idea." As they raced toward his apartment, Mark realized he was letting Sophia see too much, his desperation, his attachment to the past. But something about her made him feel he could trust her, despite years of training that taught him to trust no one. That feeling terrified him more than Keller's men. The hallway to Mark's apartment was eerily quiet. Too quiet. "They're already inside," he whispered, drawing a concealed handgun from his ankle holster, a move that made Sophia raise an eyebrow. Just security consulting, huh? She whispered back with a hint of amusement despite the danger. Mark positioned himself beside his door, signaling a silent count to Sophia, who immediately understood his tactical plan without explanation. Their unspoken communication felt strangely intimate, like they'd worked together for years instead of hours. The door burst open under Mark's kick, revealing two armed men ransacking his living room. What happened next left Sophia momentarily stunned. Mark moved with lethal precision, disarming the first man before he could even raise his weapon. The second attacker fired, the bullet grazing Mark's arm, but it didn't slow him down. Within seconds, both men were incapacitated on the floor. Sophia secured the attackers while Mark rushed to a small safe hidden behind a family photo, retrieving a worn photo album and a USB drive. "Who are you really?" Sophia demanded, staring at him with new eyes. Before Mark could answer, his phone rang. Unknown number. "You've made this much harder than it needed to be, Reeves." Keller's voice oozed through the speaker. "Now I have your daughter." Mark's world collapsed around him. The photo album slipped from his fingers, pictures of Emma and her mother scattering across the floor. "You're lying," he said, voice deadly calm despite the panic rising in his chest. "Am I?" Keller laughed. "Tell me, does she still carry that little rabbit stuffed animal everywhere?" Mark locked eyes with Sophia, who was already on her phone, frantically texting her team. The look she gave him confirmed his worst fear. "What do you want?" Mark asked, his military training the only thing keeping him from breaking down. "The flash drive you just retrieved from your safe," Keller replied. "Bring it to the abandoned Westlake factory. Alone, you have 1 hour." The line went dead. "Mark," Sophia approached cautiously. "What's on that drive?" He clutched the USB in his fist, conflict raging in his eyes. "Evidence from my last mission. Names, dates, locations. Everything needed to bring down a network of weapons dealers working with terrorist cells." He paused. "Including Raymond Keller. That's why you left Delta Force," Sophia realized. "You were building a case. Until Sarah, my wife, was killed in what was ruled an accident, I knew better. But I had Emma to think about. I hid the evidence and walked away." Self-loathing twisted his features. "And now my daughter is paying for my cowardice." Sophia's hand found his, warm and steady. "That wasn't cowardice, Mark. That was love." Their eyes met, a current of understanding passing between them. "But you're not alone anymore." For a brief moment, despite everything falling apart around him, Mark felt something he hadn't experienced since losing Sarah. Sophia wasn't just offering professional help, she was offering partnership. "We'll get her back," she promised. "But not Keller's way. My team is mobilizing and I have a plan." She squeezed his hand. "Trust me." And despite everything he'd been through, despite the walls he'd built around himself and his daughter, Mark found that he did. The abandoned factory loomed against the darkening sky, its broken windows like hollow eyes watching Mark approach alone. According to plan, he carried the flash drive in his pocket and wore a concealed wire that connected him to Sophia and her FBI team positioned strategically around the perimeter. "I don't like this." Sophia's voice came through his nearly invisible earpiece. "Keller's too confident." "We don't have a choice," Mark murmured. "Just be ready." Inside, the factory was a maze of rusting machinery and crumbling walls. Mark's training automatically mapped escape routes and defensive positions as he moved deeper into the building. His senses, honed through years of high-stakes operations, detected movement before he actually saw anyone. "Daddy!" Emma's voice echoed through the cavernous space, sending both relief and terror through Mark's heart. She appeared at the far end of the room, clutched tightly by one of Keller's men. Her cheeks were tear-stained, but she was unharmed, clutching her beloved stuffed rabbit. "I'm here, sweetie," Mark called, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Everything's going to be okay." Keller emerged from the shadows, applauding slowly. "The devoted father arrives. How touching." "Let her go," Mark demanded. "I brought what you wanted." He held up the flash drive. "Ah yes, the evidence that could ruin me." Keller smiled. "Toss it over." "Emma first." Keller laughed. "You're not in a position to negotiate, Reeves. Or should I say, Master Sergeant Reeves of the Delta Force." Did you think I wouldn't figure out who you really are? Mark's blood ran cold. If Keller knew his military background, he'd be prepared for resistance. This was rapidly becoming more dangerous. Team moving into position. Sophia whispered in his ear, "Keep him talking." "How did you find me?" Mark asked, buying time. "Your wife wasn't as careful as you," Keller said with a cruel smile. "Before her unfortunate accident, she was quite helpful in tracking your movements." The implication hit Mark like a physical blow. "You're saying Sarah was working for me? Not willingly, of course. Amazing what people will do when properly motivated." Keller's smug expression made Mark's vision blur with rage. "Don't listen to him," Sophia urged in his ear. "He's trying to provoke you." But Mark was already moving, his body responding to years of training and the pure protective instinct of a father. He launched the flash drive high into the air, drawing everyone's eyes upward for a crucial half-second, exactly as he and Sophia had planned. In that moment of distraction, FBI agents burst through multiple entry points. Gunfire erupted as Keller's men responded. Mark used the chaos to sprint toward Emma, focused solely on reaching his daughter as bullets flew around them. The man holding Emma panicked, dragging her behind a large piece of machinery. Mark changed direction, circling around to cut them off, when a searing pain tore through his leg. He stumbled, looking down to see blood spreading across his thigh. "Mark!" Sophia's voice came through the comm and from somewhere to his right. "Emma's handler is heading for the east exit!" Pushing through the pain, Mark forced himself up, limping rapidly toward the east side of the building. Blood loss was making him lightheaded, but adrenaline kept him moving. He rounded a corner to see Emma's captor dragging her toward a door, gun in hand. With no clear shot and no time to waste, Mark did the only thing he could. He charged forward, roaring his daughter's name. The man turned, raising his weapon. Emma screamed. A gunshot rang out, but it wasn't Mark who fell. The kidnapper crumpled to the ground as Sophia appeared from behind a column, her service weapon still raised. "Daddy!" Emma broke free, running into Mark's arms. He clutched her tightly, his whole body shaking with relief. "You're safe now, baby. You're safe," he whispered into her hair, meeting Sophia's eyes over Emma's head. The look that passed between them held volumes, gratitude, respect, and something deeper neither was ready to name. Their moment was interrupted by more gunfire from the main area. Keller was still free, and the situation was far from over. "Take Emma," Mark said to Sophia. "Get her out of here. And leave you bleeding and outnumbered," Sophia challenged, quickly applying a temporary tourniquet to his leg. "Not happening. Sophia, please, she's everything to me." "I know," Sophia said softly, "which is why we're all getting out together." She handed him her backup weapon. "Can you still shoot?" Mark checked the gun with practiced ease. "I could shoot blindfolded with both hands tied behind my back." A smile flickered across Sophia's face. "Modest." She turned to Emma, kneeling to meet her eyes. "Emma, sweetie, I need you to be very brave for a few more minutes. Can you do that?" Emma nodded, clutching her rabbit tightly. "Are you helping my daddy?" "Yes," Sophia said. "And he's helping me too. That's what friends do." The word, friends, seemed inadequate for what was developing between them, but now wasn't the time to examine it. "Stay between us," Mark instructed Emma. "And if we say run, you run. Understand?" They moved as a unit toward the nearest exit, Mark scanning ahead while Sophia covered their rear. They had almost reached safety when Keller himself appeared, blocking their path. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, training his gun directly at Emma. Time seemed to slow. Mark saw every detail with crystal clarity, the malice in Keller's eyes, Emma's terrified face, Sophia moving to shield his daughter with her own body. In that moment, Mark made his decision. With speed that belied his injury, he lunged forward, tackling Keller just as the man fired. They crashed to the ground, wrestling for control of the weapon. Mark's military training took over, his movements precise despite the pain and blood loss. "Get Emma out!" he shouted to Sophia. "Daddy!" Emma cried as Sophia pulled her towards safety. Keller fought viciously, landing a punch to Mark's wounded leg that sent white, hot pain through his entire body. The gun between them went off, the bullet embedding itself in the concrete floor. You should have stayed hidden, Reeves. Keller snarled. Now your daughter gets to grow up an orphan. Something primal awakened in Mark at those words. With a surge of strength born of pure paternal fury, he slammed Keller's arm down, breaking his grip on the weapon. The gun skittered across the floor. Keller head-butted him, splitting open Mark's eyebrow. Blood poured into his eye, half blinding him, but he didn't relent. Every defensive technique, every close combat lesson from his military years flowed through him as they fought. Finally, Mark gained the upper hand, pinning Keller to the ground. My daughter, he said through gritted teeth, will never have to worry about you again. More FBI agents swarmed in, securing Keller as Mark collapsed beside him, exhaustion and blood loss finally taking their toll. His last conscious thought was of Emma's safety and of Sophia's face, determined and beautiful, as she'd protected his daughter with her own life. 3 weeks later, Mark sat on a park bench watching Emma play on the swings. His leg was healing, though the doctors said he'd always have a slight limp, a small price to pay for his daughter's safety. Keller and his network had been dismantled, thanks to the evidence on the flash drive and Mark's testimony. The truth about Sarah's death had been the hardest to bear. She'd been approached by Keller's men, threatened, and ultimately killed when she tried to warn Mark. She had died protecting their family, a final act of love that both broke his heart and gave him peace. As this seat taken, Sophia's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She sat beside him without waiting for an answer, closer than strictly necessary. The warmth of her arm against his felt right somehow. How's the leg? She asked. Better. How's the paperwork? She groaned. Endless. She watched Emma for a moment. She's remarkable. Resilient like her father. She has nightmares, Mark admitted. So do I. Sophia's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. That's normal, they'll fade with time. She paused. My offer still stands, you know. The Bureau could use someone with your skills. Consultant position, regular hours, no field work unless you want it. And the real reason for the offer? Mark asked, turning to face her. The real reason is sitting right here, she said softly. I've spent my career chasing shadows, Mark. You make me want something solid, something real. The honesty in her voice touched something in him that had been dormant since Sarah died. For 3 years he'd been existing, not living, focused solely on being Emma's father, shutting down the man who needed connection, partnership, love. I'm not easy to be around, he warned. I've got baggage, a complicated past. Good thing I'm specially trained to handle dangerous situations, she replied with a smile that made his heart race. Emma spotted Sophia then and came running over, her face lighting up. You came, she exclaimed, throwing her arms around Sophia's waist. I promised I would, Sophia said, returning the hug with genuine affection. Mark watched them together, his daughter and the woman who had helped save her, and felt something he thought he'd never experience again, hope for a future that held more than just survival. So, he said when Emma returned to the swings, what happens now? Sophia's eyes met his, warm with promise. Now we take it one day at a time, together. As Emma's laughter floated across the playground, Mark realized that his greatest strength had never been his Delta Force training or his combat skills. It had been his capacity to love, fiercely, completely, without reservation. And somehow, against all odds, life was offering him a second chance to use that strength. He took Sophia's hand more firmly in his. Together he agreed. I like the sound of that.